The room smelled like baby powder and something sterile, like all hospital rooms do. I was standing there just staring at my newborn son. He was so small, wrapped up tight in a white blanket, his little face scrunched up like he was still trying to figure out the world. My heart felt like it might explode. I didn't even know a person could feel this kind of love. It was like everything else disappeared. The years of trying, the stress, the fights, the tears, none of it mattered anymore. He was finally here, our son. I looked over at my wife. She was lying in the hospital bed, sweaty and tired, but beautiful in a way I couldn't explain. She had just done the most incredible thing. She brought our son into the world. I felt proud of her, of us. I thought maybe this was the happiest I'd ever been. Then she reached for the clipboard. The nurse had just handed it over. A simple form, the birth certificate paperwork. I expected her to look at me, to ask what name we should give him, what last name we should use. But she didn't. She didn't even pause. She grabbed a pen and started writing like I wasn't even there. I stepped closer and asked, "What name are we putting?" I was trying to keep my voice light, playful even, but something in my chest tightened when she didn't respond. She didn't look at me. She didn't smile. Her face went cold, flat. "He's getting my last name," she said. I blinked. Thought maybe I misheard her. "What?" "My last name," she said again, this time slower. "Not yours." It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. I just stood there frozen, the words hanging in the air like a slap. I didn't know what to say. I didn't understand. We were married. We had talked about this, hadn't we? We were going to be a family. One name, one unit. I swallowed hard. "Why?" She finally looked at me. But it wasn't the look I was expecting. Not love, not warmth. Just something sharp, unreadable. "Because I said so." That's all she said. No explanation, no discussion. I looked at the form in her hand. She was already writing it down, already making it official. My name wasn't even a thought in her mind. Something twisted in my stomach. A mix of confusion, hurt, and something else I couldn't name yet. I turned and looked at my son again, still sleeping peacefully in his little bassinet, unaware that the world had just shifted for me. And in that quiet room, filled with soft beeping machines and hushed voices, I felt something I never thought I'd feel at a moment like this. Fear. It wasn't easy for us to get here. Having a baby, it took years, years of trying, of tracking calendars, of dashed hopes every single month. At first we thought it was just bad timing. Then it turned into something heavier, something that clung to us like a weight. Friends around us started having babies. People would ask us when we were going to start a family, and I'd just smile, pretending the question didn't sting. We saw doctors, took tests, went through all the motions. It started to feel more like a job than a dream. I remember sitting in waiting rooms filled with glossy brochures and pale walls, pretending to read while she filled out form after form. She was always brave, at least on the outside. I saw the cracks, though, the way her eyes stayed red even after she stopped crying, the way she looked away from babies in grocery stores, the way she stopped saying maybe next month. I tried to be strong for her. I told her it would happen. I said we were in this together, and I meant it. When we finally got the diagnosis, unexplained infertility, it didn't even feel like an answer. It felt like another dead end. But we didn't stop. We kept going, doctor after doctor, pills, injections, waiting, hoping, losing hope, getting it back. It became our routine, a painful one. Then one day she came home from an appointment and said the doctor suggested IVF. I was nervous. We both were. But at least it felt like we were doing something, a real shot, a real chance. The process was hard, I won't lie. It drained us emotionally and financially. She had to take hormones that made her sick and tired. There were nights she cried in the bathroom, trying not to wake me, but I heard her. I always heard her. I'd lie there staring at the ceiling, wondering if this would ever work, if this would ever be worth it. But we got the call, the one we'd waited for. The transfer worked. She was pregnant. I remember the moment she told me. She held the test like it was a miracle in her hands, tears running down her face, her body shaking, and I held her like I never wanted to let go. That was the moment I thought everything had turned around for us. I thought we had made it, that the storm had finally passed. So, standing in that hospital room with our son finally here, I thought we'd done it. I thought all the pain, the years, the waiting, it all led us to this, to him. But then she grabbed that clipboard and wrote a name that wasn't mine, and just like that, I started wondering if the storm had ever really passed at all. There's something I never told her, something I thought I could carry alone, and it would be fine. A few months before we did IVF, I went in for more tests, just me. She was busy at work, so I told her I'd go alone. I didn't want to worry her, we'd already been through so much, and I figured it was just another checkup, no big deal. But it was a big deal. The doctor sat me down and said my sperm count was low. Not just low, barely there. He said even with IVF, the chances were slim if we used my sample. I felt like someone had knocked the air out of me. I'd spent so long thinking the problem might be hers, and all this time it was me. I felt ashamed, like I was broken in a way I didn't know how to explain. I imagined her face if I told her, the disappointment, the blame, even if she didn't say it out loud. The doctor gave me an option. He said we could use a donor, that we could still go through with IVF using another man's sperm. And he said something that stuck with me. She doesn't have to know. We handle this all the time. It's confidential unless you both choose to disclose it. I sat there staring at the papers. I didn't know what to do. My heart was pounding, and all I could think about was how much she wanted to be a mother, how hard she'd fought for it, how much she had already suffered. If I told her this now, right before our last chance, what would it do to her? I made the decision in that room. I signed the papers. I agreed to use donor sperm. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was protecting her. I told myself it didn't matter, that she would carry the baby, that she would still be his mother in every way that counted. And me, I'd be there. I'd raise him. I'd love him. I'd be the dad he saw every day, the man who taught him how to ride a bike and showed up at every school event. That's what mattered, right? She got pregnant. And I never told her the truth. She was so happy. She glowed again, laughed again, made little jokes about baby names. She bought tiny shoes before we even knew the gender. I kept my secret buried. It started as something small, just a way to keep her from more pain. But now, standing here in this hospital room, watching her erase me from the birth certificate, I started to wonder if that secret was bigger than I thought. Maybe I didn't just keep something from her. Maybe I built this whole moment out of silence. And now it was all starting to fall apart. Looking back, I guess the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. During the pregnancy, she started pulling away. At first, I thought it was the hormones or stress. She was tired all the time, and I understood that. Growing a baby isn't easy. But it wasn't just that. She stopped letting me come to appointments, said they were short and boring, and I didn't need to take off work. She stopped holding my hand at night. She stopped talking about the future. I told myself not to worry. I told myself it would change once the baby came, but it didn't. In the hospital, things felt even more distant. After the baby was born, I expected some kind of moment, something shared, but it was like she was in her own world, and I was just there, watching from the sidelines. She held the baby close, wouldn't let me near for more than a minute at a time. When the nurses came in to ask about feedings or checkups, she answered every question like I didn't exist. I tried not to let it get to me. I figured she was just overwhelmed. But every time I opened my mouth to say something, she shut me out with just a glance. Then her mom showed up. Margaret. I'd never liked her much. She always treated me like I wasn't good enough for her daughter. But we managed to stay polite over the years. I thought we'd put all that behind us. I was wrong. She came into the hospital room like she owned the place, kissed her daughter on the cheek, took one look at me and said, "Well, I guess you're still here, like I was a mistake they expected to disappear." She didn't even ask to hold the baby, just scooped him up and started talking about how much he looked like our side of the family. I stood there, heart thudding, watching her talk about his nose, his ears, his hands, as if I wasn't even part of this child's life, as if I hadn't waited years to meet him. I tried to speak up, say something, anything, but no one was listening. They just carried on like I wasn't there, like I was a visitor, not the father. I stood there in silence, feeling something in my chest start to crack. I thought the birth would bring us closer. I thought it would fix whatever space had grown between us. but instead I was being pushed further and further out. It wasn't just about the name anymore, it was the way she looked at me like I didn't matter. The way Margaret acted like this was her family now, and the way everyone around me acted like that was normal. That was the moment I realized something was really wrong, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know just how wrong it was. The next day, the room felt smaller. Or maybe I just felt smaller in it. She barely looked at me. Everything revolved around the baby and her mother. Margaret acted like the hospital staff reported to her. She told the nurses how to swaddle, when to bring bottles, what time to dim the lights. I tried to be patient, I tried to stay calm. I figured we were all tired and maybe I was overthinking things. But then something happened that I can't forget. I was standing outside the room, waiting while the nurse did some routine checks. I could hear muffled voices inside, hers and Margaret's. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, I just couldn't walk away. Margaret's voice came through clearly. "He doesn't need to be on the birth certificate," she said. I froze, then my wife answered, her voice low but firm. "I know, I already filled it out, it's done." My stomach dropped. I pressed my back to the wall, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the rest. But I did hear one more thing. Margaret laughed, soft and satisfied. "Good," she said. "You did the right thing." The nurse opened the door a few seconds later and smiled at me like nothing had happened. I walked back in, trying to keep my face neutral, but everything inside me was shaking. She looked up at me with a fake kind of calm. "Everything's fine," she said, "just signing some final papers." I nodded, but I couldn't even look her in the eyes. I sat down in the chair by the window and stared out at nothing. My thoughts were racing. I kept asking myself the same question. Why? Why would she cut me out like that? Why wouldn't she tell me? What had I done to deserve this? I remembered the moment we first talked about having kids. We were on the couch, feet tangled together, talking about baby names. She had smiled so big, said she wanted a little boy who had my eyes. We dreamed together, we planned together, and now she was erasing me from our child's life like none of that ever happened. That night, after her mother left for the hotel, I asked her again softly, "Why didn't you put my name?" She didn't even look up. "I made the choice I thought was best." "That's not a choice you make alone," I said, my voice shaking. She finally met my eyes then, and what I saw wasn't anger or guilt. It was indifference. "He's mine," she said. "That's all that matters." And just like that, I felt something inside me break. All the love, all the memories, all the nights we held each other and cried over this dream. It all cracked in that moment. She wasn't just cutting me out of a name, she was cutting me out of our family. The next morning, I walked into the hospital room with 2 coffees, one for me, one for her, just trying to keep the peace, maybe still hoping for a conversation that would fix everything. She didn't even look at the cup, just kept scrolling on her phone like I wasn't there. I set it on the tray table beside her and sat down in silence. The baby was asleep in the bassinet, his tiny chest rising and falling like a soft drum beat in the stillness. I found myself staring at him, looking for something, anything. Did he have my nose, my mouth, my ears? Every time I thought I saw a piece of me, doubt crept in and whispered, "Are you sure?" I didn't want to listen to that voice, but it was getting louder. A few minutes later, the nurse came in, same one who'd been checking on us since the birth. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with calm eyes and a quiet way about her. Her name tag said Angela. She gave us both a polite smile and started doing her routine check. Blood pressure, baby's vitals, notes on the chart. Then she glanced at me, just for a second, and something passed in her expression. Not pity, something else. Something like concern. She finished up, then stepped toward me and leaned in just slightly. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "Can I ask you something?" she said. I nodded, confused. "Are you sure he's yours?" I blinked. For a second, I didn't understand. My heart jumped into my throat. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice just as quiet. She didn't answer right away. She looked toward the bassinet, then at my wife, then back at me. "I've worked in maternity for 25 years, she said softly, "and sometimes and things don't add up. That's all I'll say." I stared at her, stunned. My hands went cold. I didn't know what she was trying to tell me. Was she saying something was wrong with the baby, or something else? Before I could ask, my wife spoke from the bed, not looking up from her phone. "Is everything okay?" she asked, casual. Angela turned and smiled. "Everything looks perfect," she said. Then she glanced back at me, just once, before stepping out of the room. I sat there, heart racing, staring at the baby. Those words echoed in my head over and over again. "Are you sure he's yours?" And suddenly the name thing made more sense. The distance, the coldness, the way she kept pushing me away. I didn't want to believe it, but that seed of doubt, it was planted now, and it was growing fast. I looked back at my wife, but she didn't seem worried. She didn't seem to care at all. And for the first time, I wondered if I was holding on to a dream that had never really been mine in the first place. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in the stiff hospital chair, staring at the ceiling, listening to the beeping machines and the soft breathing of my son, or at least the boy I believed was my son. Angela's words wouldn't leave me alone. "Are you sure he's yours?" The more I thought about it, the more everything started clicking into place. The way she took over the birth certificate, the coldness, the way Margaret acted like I wasn't part of this family. It wasn't just attitude, it was something more. I needed answers, real ones. The next morning, when my wife stepped out to take a call, I saw my chance. The clipboard with all the medical forms was still on the counter. I hesitated, heart pounding, but I walked over and picked it up. There were pages and pages of information, hospital check-ins, procedure notes, discharge plans. Then I saw it, IVF documentation. I flipped to the second page. My eyes scanned the form. My name was there, but not in the right place. It said partner consent under my name, but then under biological father, it was blank. Next to that, a donor code was written in neat black ink. I felt like the room spun. I flipped the next few pages with shaky hands and saw it again. Donor sperm, anonymous, authorized by patient only. Patient, my wife, not me. My vision blurred. I sat down hard in the chair, the form still in my hands. I kept reading, desperate to find something, anything that made it all okay. Something that said this was a mistake. But it wasn't. It was all there in black and white. She had done this without me. I remembered our IVF consults, how she insisted on handling the paperwork because she didn't want me to stress. I remembered sitting in the car while she ran back inside the clinic because she forgot something. I trusted her. I never once thought she'd go behind my back, but she had. She had chosen someone else, another man, a donor, and she never told me. Suddenly, every warm moment I'd felt in that hospital room turned cold. Every smile she gave during pregnancy felt like a lie. Every word she said about our son now sounded fake in my head. She walked back into the room a few minutes later. I quickly tucked the forms back where they were and sat down like nothing happened. She didn't notice, or didn't care. I looked at the baby, peaceful, perfect, sleeping. My chest ached. I didn't know what to feel. Love, rage, confusion. All I knew was the truth was finally out, and it changed everything. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The truth was sitting inside me like fire, burning hotter with every hour that passed. I'd spent the entire day pretending, smiling at nurses, nodding along to Margaret's, non-stop talking, acting like everything was fine, but I wasn't fine. I was cracking from the inside out. That night, the room was quiet. Margaret had finally gone home to rest. The baby was asleep, just the two of us. She was sitting in bed, scrolling through her phone again, like she had all week. I sat in the chair, staring at her, the words pressing against my chest, like they needed out or I'd explode. I stood up and said it. Calm at first. "I know about the donor." She froze, slowly looked up at me. Her face didn't show surprise, just stillness, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "What do you mean?" she asked, but her voice was too flat. "You switched the paperwork," I said. "You chose someone else. You knew I'd trust you, and you used that trust to cut me out." She didn't say anything, just stared at me. "I read the forms," I continued, voice shaking. "You signed for the donor, you hid it from me, and now you're acting like this baby isn't mine because biologically he isn't." She finally spoke, her tone cold. "You wouldn't understand. You were so caught up in being a dad you didn't even see what was happening. What was happening? I snapped, louder now. We were supposed to be a team. We were fighting for this together. No, she said sharply. I was fighting for a child I could trust to be healthy, to be strong. You wouldn't let go of the idea that he had to be yours, but I couldn't risk another failure. Not again. I stood there in disbelief. So you picked someone else without telling me, and now you're erasing me from his life because of it? I gave him a future, she said, a better one. One that doesn't come with your flaws, your weaknesses. You should thank me. That broke something in me. I took a step back, my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear. All the years we'd spent together, all the late nights crying over negative tests, all the appointments, all the times I held her hand and told her we'd figure it out. It all meant nothing to her now. I loved you, I said, barely able to get the words out. I still do, in some twisted way, but what you did, that's not love. She looked away. I may not be the biological father, I said, but I was ready to raise him. I still am. You can't take that away from me. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond, and in that silence, I knew I'd crossed a line we couldn't go back from. The truth was out now, and nothing would ever be the same. The next few days were a blur. We were discharged from the hospital, but it didn't feel like we were going home as a family. It felt like we were just leaving. No celebration, no shared moment of peace, just tension sitting between us, heavy and unspoken. She didn't talk to me in the car. She stared out the window the whole ride while the baby slept in the back seat. Every red light felt longer than it needed to be. I kept glancing at her, hoping for some sign that there was still something left to hold on to, but she didn't even flinch. When we got to the house, I grabbed the diaper bag and car seat. As soon as I stepped inside, I froze. Margaret was already there. Her suitcase sat in the hallway, and she was in the kitchen rearranging the bottles we hadn't even used yet. She looked up, saw me, and narrowed her eyes like I was an unwelcome guest in my own home. "You can put the baby down in the nursery," she said, not even a hello. "We'll take care of things from here. We." She meant her and my wife. I set the car seat down slowly and tried to stay calm. "This is my house," I said, "my son." "You gave up that right the moment you lied," she snapped. "You tricked her, you knew the baby wasn't yours, and kept it secret." I looked over at my wife, hoping she'd say something, anything, but she just stood there, silent, tired, avoiding my eyes. "I didn't lie," I said firmly. "I didn't know. I found out in that hospital room just like you did." Margaret stepped closer. "You don't belong here anymore." That was it. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just turned, walked to the living room, and sat down. My hands were shaking, my thoughts spinning. I could hear them upstairs unpacking, cooing at the baby, shutting doors like I was already gone. That night I slept on the couch. Every creak in the floor above reminded me how much I'd lost. My son, just a few feet away, and yet I felt 100 miles from him. My wife, no, the woman I used to call my wife, barely looked at me, and Margaret acted like she owned everything, like I'd been nothing more than a sperm donor who overstayed his welcome. I knew I had a choice to make, either stay and be pushed further and further out, or stand up and fight for what I knew in my heart was mine. So the next morning, before anyone else woke up, I made a call. My sister, Priya, a lawyer, tough, smart, and the one person I could always count on. I told her everything, the donor, the paperwork, the name, the way they were pushing me out. She listened quietly. Then she said, "They can't just erase you. We're going to fix this." And for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. It didn't take Priya long to get things moving. She didn't waste time with sympathy. She went straight to facts, to law, to what I had the right to claim. And the truth was this: even if I wasn't the biological father, I had every right to be a legal one, especially since I never agreed to what happened, especially since I'd been part of this child's life from the beginning. She filed the paperwork: legal action, petition for paternity, motion for shared custody, a request for emergency protection against interference, from Margaret specifically. She said if they wanted a fight, we'd give them one. The papers were served 2 days later. My wife, or maybe I should start saying ex-wife, opened the door when the sheriff arrived. I watched from the driveway holding my breath. She stood there frozen, a stack of documents in her hands, eyes wide with something between shock and fear. Margaret, of course, exploded. She stormed out the front door, waving the papers like a flag. You're trying to ruin her, ruin this family. You think this baby is yours just because you played house for a few months? I didn't even answer her. I looked straight at my wife. I'm fighting for my son, I said quietly. That's all. She didn't say anything, not then. Just closed the door behind them. The court date came quickly. I sat beside Priya in a small courtroom that smelled like dust and old paper. My hands were sweating. My heart felt like it was in my throat. But I stayed still. When it was my turn to speak, I told the judge everything. The IVF, the donor I didn't know about, the birth, the way they tried to cut me out the moment he was born. I might not share his DNA, I said, but I planned for him. I supported his mother. I was ready to be his father in every way that matters. I still am. Angela, the nurse, even showed up. She testified to what she saw in the hospital, how I'd been sidelined, how hurt I was, how the paperwork showed no signature from me authorizing a donor. Then came the judge's decision. She ruled in my favor. I was granted legal paternity, joint custody, and a protective order keeping Margaret out of parental decisions. The judge even scolded them for trying to hide the truth and use it to take my rights away. I walked out of that courtroom not just as a man who fought, but as a father who won. Things aren't perfect now. My ex-wife and I barely speak unless it's about our son. Margaret is gone from the picture completely, and my apartment is small, but it's filled with laughter whenever he's there. We named him Jacob. He knows me as Dad, and every time he runs to me with open arms, I know I did the right thing. Because love, real love, isn't in blood. It's in who stays, and I'm not going anywhere.